Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Scotland and we're going to have a look at another beer from one of my local breweries here in Clackmannanshire. So for this review we are once again going to go along the road to Alloa. And we're having a taste of another beer from Williams Brothers Brewing Company. So this one is the Brel, which is a Belgian Style IPA coming in at 5.7% ABV, and this is another one that I think is an exclusive brew for Aldi stores in Scotland. You saw me a few videos ago review the Clute, which was a West Coast style IPA, and that was really nice actually. So I'm very curious to see how this one turns out. In my mind, Williams Brothers are best described in kind of two ways. For me, they're a very sort of session beer based brewery, but they're also known for their historic recipes as well, which are very, very interesting. The Freich Heather Ale is probably the most well-known beer from these guys, but you know, there's some other very good beers available. Caesar Augustus, which is a sort of lager. It's like an IPL basically, an India Pale Lager. That's a very interesting beer and one of my favourite ones. Paradigm Shift is always very interesting, the kind of red ale. Pavlov's Dog I always enjoyed too, and March of the Penguins. Those are probably my favourite beers that I've had from Williams Brothers so far. So to try the things that are a little bit more adventurous like this are always interesting too. And they've got some tall boys that have come out recently as well, so I need to see if I can get a hold of some of those for you and review them too. So maybe a little trip through to Valhalla's Goat will solve that problem. I haven't seen them here in Clackmannanshire, which to be honest is one of my complaints about Williams Brothers Brewery. It's a bit difficult to get a hold of the beers in their home county, if you like. So yeah, that's something that they do need to sort out a little bit actually, but maybe in the future they'll open up a little bar or something in Alloa. That would be quite interesting. But yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. It's not often that you can find Belgian IPAs these days. It's a style that I always enjoyed, but as was the case with the West Coast IPA, they've taken a bit of a back seat in recent times to the kind of haze craze New England IPAs. But yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Williams Brothers before. No doubt there will be some more at some point in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Scottish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Williams Brothers Brewing Company then. So as I've told you before, this brewery, or the company if you like, basically started out as the family owned Glen Brew home brewing shop through in Glasgow, and the first beer that these guys produced was inspired by a 17th century Gaelic recipe for Freich Heather Ale, which of course takes its name from the Celtic mythological hero. So basically in 1988 a woman came into the brew shop with a translation into English of this ancient recipe, and she wanted to create a batch of the beer to share with her family, and she agreed that she would share the recipe with Bruce Williams in exchange for help brewing a batch. And I think today I've heard on the grapevine that basically this woman gets as much Freich Heather Ale as she wants, because you know that's what really helped kick Williams Brothers Brewing off. But the small batch of beer that they produced was only 5 barrels, and it was produced in Taynoak railway station in Argyll and Bute. And the following year, the first year after they released it, the demand for this beer increased massively. So the official start date of the brewery, which came just after that, is listed as 1992. And at this point, Scott Williams joined his brother Bruce, and they began to develop other historic recipes, which are still available today. So there's the Groatsit, which is a gooseberry wheat ale, the Kelpie, which is a seaweed ale, the Abaloom, which is an elderberry dark ale, and they've also got the Alba, which is the Scots Pine Ale. And I think that's the only one of the historic recipes that I've reviewed for you other than the Freich, so I need to get the other ones reviewed for you at some point soon. Again, that's something that I'll pick up from Valhalla's Goat at some point. But these 4 recipes were produced in the Craigmill Brewery in Stratham between 1998 and 2004, and that brewery of course now is home to Strathaven Ales, but in 2004 they relocated to their current base at the 4th Brewery in Kellybank in Alloa, and this was when they adopted adopted the name Williams Brothers Brewing Company. But oddly enough, these guys are the last brewery in the old brewing capital of Scotland. You know, one of the local pubs here is called the Old Brewery, and they had a massive big complex here. I think it was McEwen's actually that used to brew in there. But Clackmannanshire, of course, we've got a lot of whisky stores around here, so a lot of whisky comes down here and matures. We get black moss on the houses because of the you know, the ethanol evaporating and stuff like that, which is quite interesting. You need to keep an eye on your houses here in Clackmannanshire. But over the last few years, these guys have been building up their capacity. The capacity that they have at the brewery at the moment is 100,000 hectolitres of beer. But they have plans to build a new brewery just down from that, which will take the capacity up to 200,000 hectolitres of beer per year, which I think is pretty impressive. These beers are very widely distributed throughout Scotland. I think they're quite easy to find in England if you go to a decent beer shop as well. But you can get them, you can get certain ones in the supermarkets here, and it tends to be the case that different supermarkets carry different Williams Brothers beers actually. And you know, these guys, as I said to you, I would really class this brewery as a kind of session beer brewery. Like, they're very, very good when it comes to the sort of 4-5% actually, so definitely worth checking out if that's your sort of thing. And I think they're more, it's probably fair to say that these guys are a little bit more of a traditional type brewery rather than a kind of a more American style craft brew, if you like. But that said, they do experiment a lot with American hops. They've released the Tall Boys, which I've heard are a little bit more kind of bold compared to some of the other beers that they've done before. So as I said, very, very curious to try those. They also own the Valhalla's Goat Shop, one of the best beer shops in Scotland. That's through at Kelvin Bridge in Glasgow. They've got the In Deep pub, which is just underneath that. You can get a lot of the Williams Brothers beers on tap there, and they're also co-owners of the Drygate Brewing Company, which is a share with Tennent's actually at Well Park, just to the east of the main city centre in Glasgow as well. So quite a prominent company, this one of the better known Scottish breweries these days, and they are exporting a little bit as well. I know that Freya is exported over to the States and to Australia, and I think even to Japan actually. I'm sure Koji in Osaka was getting some of their beers in his shop. When I think about it, because he recognised it when I showed him it. So yeah, an interesting brewery this one, and one that you definitely need to check out if you want to try some Scottish craft beers. Freya, of course, an ancient Gaelic beer, is probably the one that you really want to try. But my personal favourites, as I said, Paradigm Shift, Caesar Augustus, the Pavlov's Dog, the name went right out of my head there, and also March of the Penguins. Those are probably my favourite beers from these guys. But they do a lot of special brews for Aldi, Golden Ratio, and what was it called? Yeah, Golden Ratio and Perfect Storm, I think, were the ones that kicked it off, and now there's a good few more beers going through Aldi as well. But a very interesting brewery, this one, and as I say, one that you need to check out if you're interested in Scottish beer. But that's all you really need to know about Williams Brothers Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more, of course, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and of course you can check out the Rate Beer and Untappd pages to see all the different beers that they've done. And yeah, check out Aldi's website as well, because there are quite a few exclusive brews there, and those aren't posted on the website as far as I can gather. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. So as I mentioned to you earlier, this one is a 5.7% Belgian IPA. So, you know, I think this is a bit stronger than some of their other beers that you're going to try. Most of them, I think, tend to sit around the 4.5% ABV mark, so 5.7% for Williams Brothers is a little bit adventurous compared to some of their other beers. I mean, I remember Paradigm Shift, I think, might have been around 7%, and the Double Joker, I think, so like 7 or 8 or something like that. So not the heaviest one, but for one of their kind of regular brews, this one is a little bit heavier, I think, but a little bit low, I guess you could say, for the Belgian Style IPA too. So they're still trying to maintain this kind of sessionability, I think. But there you can see on the side, there is the symbol for Williams Brothers Brewing Company. Very, very distinctive, of course. It says on the back here, this enigmatic Belgian IPA pours copper, revealing a blend of Belgian and US ale yeasts. The aggressive American hop profile is balanced by more delicate European varieties, enhanced by an underlying fruity character derived from the addition of coriander and orange peel. So yeah, I think this will be very interesting. So let's get this guy out, and we'll get on with the tasting then. I'm really curious about this. As I say, I can't even remember what the last Belgian IPA I reviewed was. It was maybe the double X from Duranke or something like that, or perhaps one of the special Duvel beers. It might have been Duvel Cashmere, if I remember right. But yeah. So yeah, as you can see with this one, as they were saying on the can, this is most definitely a nice kind of coppery colour. I'm not sure how well you're going to see that on the can. Well, it comes out not too badly actually. I've got the camera control down here. I was worried that the red of the drum cover wouldn't let you see it, but a lovely looking beer this actually. It's quite unusual, I would say, for a Belgian IPA to be as clear as this. That's the first thing that I would notice about this, but I agree on the point that this is a lovely kind of copper colour. There's a solid 2/3 finger of a frothy, I would say kind of creamy beige coloured head on this one. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, but mainly it's a stream of small bubbles rather going up to it there. But overall it looks really quite nice, I have to say. I mean, a bit darker than some of the Belgian IPAs that I've come across, but if it's got a US ale yeast in it as well, then yeah, it will probably be a little bit darker. The malts, it doesn't say anything about the malts actually, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, let's have a look at the aroma then and see how we get on with this. I'm really curious about this beer. Yeah. So straight away, I can really pick up the coriander right away. It's got that kind of grainy, it's got that kind of grainy sort of spicy note that you always get from coriander. I'm not getting so much of the orange peel right enough, which is interesting. So yeah, to me, this beer, it's interesting. It almost smells a little bit kind of farmhousey in some way. It's got a little bit of that kind of rusticy, kind of a little bit of that vegetal, kind of herbally type thing going on that you can often get from farmhouse yeasts. Yeah, that's really quite interesting actually. Definitely, this is one of the more kind of curious aromas I think that I've come across from Williams Brothers. I mean, one of the things I would always say is that their beers, the aromas are more kind of subtle. They don't jump out of the glass at you, but you do get a fair little bit of complexity in the flavour of some of these beers. So yeah, the coriander jumps out at me right away. There's a little bit of that herbal kind of vegetal kind of thing going on, and there's some nice biscuity notes. Yeah, a little bit of biscuit, a little touch of caramel maybe, some brown bread, but a little bit of that kind of vegetal herbal thing kind of forming the baseline of the beer. I would have expected, if it was a Belgian yeast, I would have expected it to be a little bit more kind of doughy and bready in that sense, but it's not really got the doughy characteristics that you might normally expect, to be honest with you. It's really more of a kind of, it strikes me as being a little bit more sort of farmhousey, which is interesting. But yeah, I'm sure it will come out in the flavour actually. But yeah, an interesting point from the more malty side of this beer. On the hoppy side of things, you can detect a little bit of that American fruit in there. You get some of the big kind of thicker oily fruits, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is either using Belgian hops or German hops. It's got a little bit of that kind of lighter grassy note to it, a little bit of floral quality as well, but also the smooth earthiness. As I've told you before, I always found that that Belgian hops were a little bit more English in their earthy character, a little bit darker, whereas in the German ones are a bit lighter. So I've always found that Belgian hops kind of straddle that line between English and German hops. But yeah, the aroma of this is quite interesting. Again, it's very smooth, which is what you would expect if you know Williams Brothers. But on the fruity side of things, there's a wee bit of a kind of orangey note to this one. It's not so much the orange peel, it comes out a little bit more. I wouldn't be surprised if they put a bit of Amarillo or maybe Mosaic, something like that in this one. And of course there are other hops in there that will give you more orangey flavours. Mandarina Bavaria might well be a good option for this one if they've put the orange peel in there as well. And it definitely, the grassiness and the earthiness really does give the impression of a bit of German hop. So yeah, the fruity side of this one for me does lean a little bit towards the orangey side of things, but there's a little bit of the kind of grassy-ish type aroma as well to this, the grassy fruits, to be honest. So yeah, it's an interesting aroma, this one. There's a few quirky things going on in there, but as I always say, take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma before you get stuck into it. I think this is a an interesting smelling beer. So yeah, let's have a taste of this and see how we get on. So this one is the Brel, a Belgian Style IPA, coming in at 5.7% ABV from Williams Brothers Brewing Company here in Clackmannanshire in Scotland. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål. Yeah, that's quite interesting that. If I was blind tasting this, I don't know if I'd necessarily pick up right away that it was a Belgian Style IPA. Although in fairness, when the flavour matures a little bit, you do get a little bit of that on the aftertaste. It starts to become a little bit more Belgian-like in the aftertaste, I would say. But in the beginning, there's almost a little bit of this, it's almost a little bit like Czech lagery or English bitter. It's got a little bit of the graininess of an English bitter, but it's got some of the smoothness you would expect of like a Czech Tmavy or Cherny or something like that. This is a really interesting beer, actually. It's not a Belgian IPA in the traditional sense, at least, that I've come across before. But bear in mind, this beer's obviously been filtered. And I think normally with a Belgian IPA, they probably wouldn't filter it, in my experience. So that's another interesting point about this one. So yeah, I like it though. I do like this one. It's another, it kind of sticks to this mantra that I said Williams Brothers have of producing quite nice sessionable beers. So yeah, straight away with this one then. I suppose the other thing we need to note about this is that it's got a US ale yeast strain in it as well, so maybe that's why it's not quite as thick and doughy. I was forgetting that. But yeah, with this beer then, you get that nice kind of white bready quality. That blankets the middle of your tongue. It's got that typical malty smoothness that you would expect of a Williams Brothers beer. When you move a bit further forward on the tongue, that's when you get some of the more kind of doughy, bready notes out of this beer, the doughy, yeasty kind of things that you'd expect of the Belgian style beer. But I think towards the back of the palate, it's a bit lighter and kind of sweeter, which is what you would expect from the American yeast strain, which is interesting. It's double fermentations like that. Well, I don't know if you can call it double fermentations, but double yeast fermentations are always an interesting game, if you like. But in the centre of your palate, you definitely get a little bit of a sweet caramel out of this one. It becomes a little bit more biscuity as you go further out towards the side of the palates, but in front of that, you do get some of these doughy, kind of bready, yeasty notes that you would expect of a Belgian yeast strain. And I think this is one, I can feel the Belgian-y notes coming out more, so this is one I think that takes a little bit of time just to sort of open up, basically. So yeah, it gets a little bit more kind of grainy towards the back of the palate. You can definitely feel the coriander having its influence there in the middle of the tongue. It's kind of sitting and mixing in with the sort of bready backbone that the beer has. But in the very centre of the palate, like I say, a little bit of a sweet caramel. As you move further out from that, a little bit more kind of sweet and biscuity. If you go to the back corners of the palate, it's got a nice little bit of it's got a nice little touch of earthiness to it, which I think is either German or Belgian hops. But as you come further forward from that, it smooths out a little bit. You get some nice floral aromaticity on the front corners of the tongue. Then round the very front curve of the palate, it's a little bit lighter and grassy. I would expect, by the way that the flavours are coming out in this, that the European hops have been used as the bittering hop. Those are the ones that have been added early on in the brew. But behind the front curve of the palate, that's where you get the oily bubble, where the fruity esters kind of push their way out of the beer. And to me, again, this one leans towards the orangey side of things, and I think that would suggest I think it's maybe Amarillo that's in this one, because the orange has a little bit of an oily character, but at the same time I wouldn't be surprised if it is Mosaic that's in here. So yeah, there's other hops that can give you orange as well. I think Sabro is the new one in America. You've got Mandarin of Bavaria, you've got Pacifica from New Zealand. I forget what the other New Zealand one is that gives you the orange as well, but I had that recently. But yeah, I would say the fruitiness of this beer is quite orangey. There's maybe a little bit of a very light kind of limey note in the beginning of this one too, but very quickly it's the orange that takes over. I don't get too much of the kind of orange peel out of this one, maybe a little bit on the front edge of the tongue in the aftertaste, but I'd say the fruitiness comes mainly from the esters that have come out of the hops in this beer actually. So that's another interesting point to make about this one. I would say that overall this beer is pretty thick and oily in my mind. So yeah, it's quite an interesting beer, this one. I would say that, you know, Williams Brothers are quite solid when it comes to combining styles, and it's almost got a little bit of an American West Coasty type IPA to it, and just a little bit of a Belgian hint. So I mean, if I think about this one compared to the Clute, it's almost like the Clute, but just with a little bit of a kind of Belgian character to it. I think that's probably a fair way to describe this one, and I'm glad when I try this one, I'm glad that I reviewed the Clute first before I reviewed this one. I was tempted to do this one first, but I'm glad that I didn't now, because it's better to make the comparison the other way, I think. So yeah, I would say this is definitely not the most Belgian type Belgian IPA that you're going to come across. It's got a lot of West Coast character, but it really suits kind of suits having that little bit of doughiness to it as well, which is quite nice. So yeah, thumbs up to Williams Brothers Brewing for this one. Again, like I said, I don't know if this is going to be as bold, or if the tall boys are going to be a bit bolder than this, but again, it strikes me as another kind of sessionable type beer, and I think that's what Williams Brothers really like doing. They like making drinkable beers that have different flavours and things in them, and you can't fault them for that. You know, they want their beers to be sessionable and drinkable, and that's always a good thing. So yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then, I would say that this is a pretty mid-bodied beer. Carbonation is very smooth. It's one of the thicker ones, I would say, that I've had from Williams Brothers. It's pushing that top end of mid-bodied. I'd say overall it's a big oily mouthfeel, this beer. Middle of your palate's got a lovely smoothness to it, a little bit of sweetness like I said. The coriander doesn't give too much spice to it. It feels more like a sort of infused flavour, but when the middle of your palate dries out a bit, you get more of it. On the hoppy side of things, I think it's about 30 IBUs or something, this one. I wouldn't think it'd be more than that, but you've got a nice kind of oily, fruity character to this beer as well, which is really nice. The orangey flavours that this beer has complements the other things that are going on really quite well. So yeah, an interesting beer, this one, and one that I think you should check out if you enjoy the more malty beers that you'll find from Williams Brothers. If you like Paradigm Shift or yeah, Pavlov's Dog, I'm trying to think what else they've got, the Red Ale, you probably will quite enjoy this one. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one then. This one is the Brel Belgian Style IPA at 5.7%, and an Aldi exclusive brew from Williams Brothers Brewing Company here in Clackmannanshire in Scotland. So yeah, interesting to review this one, and I hope that you guys have enjoyed my take on it. So until the next time, stand just now, and I'll catch you guys later. Make sure you check out my social media and all of this. Let me know your own thoughts on the beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Williams Brothers as well, and like I said, hopefully we can take a look at some of their tall boy beers as well. I need to get over to Valhalla's Goat, and I recommend that you do as well. Slàinte, skål, cheers.